Another member of the Indian cricket team's support staff has tested positive for COVID-19 a day ahead of the fifth and the final test against England in Manchester. Now, according to NDTV sources, India's training session on the eve of the test has been cancelled as a result. Earlier, head coach Ravi Shastri and fellow members of the support staff Bharat Arun, R. Sridhar and Nitin Patel had gone into isolation in England after Shastri returned a positive test result. Now, according to later reports, two of Shastri's fellow support staff members have been in isolation and they also tested positive. The Virat Kohli-led Indian cricket team had last trained in Manchester on Wednesday but were asked to remain in their hotel following Thursday's positive result. Now, who all are these non-playing members of the cricket squad who've tested positive? There are many members, as we just listed out. Members of the Indian cricket team's support staff have also tested positive. Now, this shock comes a day ahead of the fifth and final test against England. But there are certain big questions as to what the demand from the ECB has been. Let's put up those graphics. No, the graphics on the England Cricket Board and the demand that they have placed. So, the demand that they have placed is that the ECB wants the English Cricket Board, they want the Board of Control for Cricket in India to forfeit the test. That because your players are positive, you forfeit the test. Consider defeat. Now, if players test negative, they will play. Forfeiture demand has been placed after non-playing member tested positive. Now we come to those big questions that we are asking right now. The England Cricket Board, is it making an unjust demand? That is question number one. Question number two, why should India be punished or Indian cricket be punished for a pandemic? Anyone can get COVID. I mean, a bio bubble does not mean 100% guarantee that people will not get COVID. Whatever the reason may be, it's an act of God. Nobody, I mean, these people did not create the coronavirus. So why forfeiture? And the third important question, since we are talking about an act of God, should England be asked? We know England is a rainy country, the United Kingdom, it rains a lot and matches keep getting cancelled. Should England, the next time it rains, be asked to forfeit their matches? They will always be at the bottom of the table by that logic. Let me introduce Mr. Nikhil Naz. He's a sports journalist. Joining us also Sanjay Jha, founder of cricketnext.com. We have Mr. G. Rajaraman, senior sports journalist, and we will also be joined in by Yajuvendra Singh, former Indian cricketer. Thank you very much. It's an important discussion, beg your pardon, but a decision is pending on this matter. Nikhil Naz, I want to begin with you first. What's your view on this demand? You know, what will happen eventually, whether COVID result comes positive, negative, we'll come to that later. But this very demand from the ECB, what do you make of it?
I mean, firstly, I'm not aware, Sanket, if certain demands like these have been placed by the ECB. But if they have been, then I'd have to agree with you that you'd be fair to call it an unjust demand. I'll tell you why. I mean, I don't think the Indian team has not followed the law of the land. That's what you're supposed to do. The same Indian team went to Australia and were asked to hard quarantine. And some occasions, for 3 weeks in a row, they were asked not even to get out of their room. They went by it. Now going to the England, you have to follow the law of the land that exists at the moment. A few examples. You had a idiot called Javo, who was a sport fan, who walked on to the cricket field 3 times during 3 different test matches. Were the ECB, careful enough to ensure that a member of the audience doesn't close contact with the players that were playing? No, they weren't. So I mean, they have to keep their side of the bargain. Apart from that, if you take a look at what's happening in England, I mean, you're seeing crowds are allowed there. There is no social distancing, and these are decisions that are taken at a national level. So you can't really fault the ECB. But then I'm just extending that to cricket as well. You have the Euro, which has now been in the sense called a super spreader event. It will even put the Kumbh Mela to shame in that sense. So you had a packed house in the Euro final. IPL that took place at the Wembley Stadium. You had the Wimbledon Championship, which was again sold out, no social distancing. Everyone was allowed. You know, the outside courts in Wimbledon, the viewers are in very close contact to the players themselves. So when all of this is happening around them, I don't think the Indian team in any sense has broken any sort of law here. So then it should be incumbent upon the ECB to ensure that the bubble is maintained. And they called for a soft bubble. And in a soft bubble, as we've seen in the past, these cases will happen. Why just a soft bubble? Even in a hard bubble, cases like that happen. When you had a case in the IPL where it was a hard bubble and, you know, very close, rules were followed, yet you had a case. So this is the new normal. You have to get used to it. Blaming one team for it, I don't think is the right way to go about.
Yeah, and it'll come back to bite you. I mean, what if a member of the English cricket team has COVID? Then should India or the BCCI then demand that the match be forfeited? Sanjay Jha, what's your opinion?
Well, Sanket, the English team is behaving very, and I think this is a cowardly vision of following people and surprising them. Now, by a crazy coincidence, in Manchester as we talk, and I'm looking forward to catching a couple of days of good. And
Mr. Jha, we seem to be losing your audio off and on. I mean, let's quickly get this fixed because you're making an important point. We'll get your audio connection fixed and then come back to you. In the meanwhile, Mr. Yajuvendra Singh, what do you think?
Yeah. I think it's terrible for ECB to even behave in this manner. Forget anything else. I mean, I'm quite what Nikhil said. He's relayed it excellently in the short time that he got. But I really can't believe that somebody is trying to knock off a series like this. Rather, if I was in the place of ECB, it is your responsibility to have ensured that nothing happens of this nature. As in England, I think everyone is just moving around freely. There's no bio bubble now where anything is concerned. So, I mean, these chaps have got it. None of the players have proved to be positive. I think the match should just go on. I don't know what they're making so much of a noise about. Maybe the defeat has really got them into a very bad situation or a state of mind.
No, you know, the reason why one must outrage, or if outrage is too bad a word, express dissent and concern is because today it's England, tomorrow it will be anyone else. I mean, then you will have no matches. Yeah. What about you, Mr. Rajaraman? What do you think?
Thank you, Sanket. First and foremost, as Nikhil pointed out, we don't know if ECB has made such a demand. But if it has, it is the most laughable demand from a very, very respected cricket board. It's been a leader, and this is not what you would expect from England. You would expect understanding. You would expect the fact that none of the players has tested positive to go in favor of the Indians and for the match to continue. I think it is unfair that the Indian team was perhaps asked to stay back because a physio tested positive today, and I think it is really unfair on the part of England to have denied India the chance to practice today, and I'm sure the game will go on.
Right, Nikhil. Okay, Sanjay Jha, I believe, is now back with us. Yes, Mr. Jha, you were saying. Sorry, we couldn't hear you properly. Yeah.
No, not to worry at all. Sanket, by a crazy coincidence, I happen to be here in Manchester as we talk.
Okay.
And I'm hoping to grab a few days of the Old Trafford test. Can you get my echo out? That will be nice.
Sure. Fixing.
Yep. And in the meantime, I believe the response of the ECB to say that India should forfeit is bizarre. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. And in my opinion, a cowardly manifestation from their side. The rules are terribly strict. All our cricketers have lived in a bubble. I did an RT-PCR test. I've been fully vaccinated. I'm going to do 3 tests in the course of the next 8 days. And this is for an ordinary civilian. Sports people have very stringent, kind of norms that they have to fulfill. So if anybody is responsible, then it's the British establishment and the ECB that needs to explain themselves.
That's right. Nikhil Naz, this is an interesting point that Sanjay Jha is mentioning, and I'll come to him again. But I want to know from you, he says that there are stringent rules in place. There is a set protocol in place for situations like these. Would you be aware of what usually happens?
Yeah, Sanket, I mean, it depends. So when there was a bubble that the ECB was maintaining, and I'll go back to the first series when it started, when West Indies actually toured England. That was the first cricket series to be played right after the coronavirus lockdown. And at that time, they had very strict rules where you couldn't just move out of that bio bubble. You, in fact, had to stay in the same hotel as where the ground was. And that's why they even chose grounds where the hotel was there. On that occasion, they had an English player, Jofra Archer, who, while traveling from one city to another, took his own car to reach from one city to another, and on the way took a detour to go and meet his friends. Upon finding that out, the ECB had then suspended him and not made him play. But those were the rules then. The rules now have been eased, as they have been eased, as I mentioned, right throughout the country. Now, in case ECB had this rule of forfeiting in case, number of your players test positive, then these should have been spelled out right at the start of the series. I'll give you a comparison. I'm taking you back to the Olympic Games that were also played under the shadow of the coronavirus, and I was going through the rules of hockey at the time. And at that time, all hockey teams were told that you will have to have 7 to 8 members outside the bubble as reserve squad members. So in case some test positive, you can always call upon those reserve squad members. In case you can't field a team of 11 players on the field, thereby you will have to forfeit a match. But these rules were laid out right at the start of the tournament. Did the ECB do that? I'm not aware of that. And if they did, I don't think Indian team would have been, in any sense, breaking the protocol. So that's very important to note in that sense. As I said, they were following the law of the land, and I don't see anything wrong there.
That's right. Mr. Yajuvendra, do you think that, of course, we'll all hope for the best that no one tests positive, but one has to prepare for the worst as well while hoping for the best. In a situation like this, do you think the most likely thing to happen should be a cancellation of the match? Hold it some other time?
See, I think you'll make Sanjay feel very bad because he's in Manchester wanting to watch the match. I think there'll be a lot of disappointed people. There'll be a lot of disappointed people, and if everybody is negative, if the teams are negative, I don't think there should be any issue of not having the match. But if they give up the match, then we win the series and we win the Patori Trophy, which is a fantastic thing. Because Tiger Patori, 10 years, it is his 10th death anniversary, and I think the Indian team would like to win this series, not for anything else, but at least for Tiger Patori.
Absolutely, Sanjay Jha, I want to come back to you.
And for Sanjay Jha to be watching the match at least.
Absolutely, that's why he's sitting there, isn't he? Happy. Sanjay Jha, I want to come to you. Has there been, and pardon my ignorance, any such case in the past where you have had this, supposed case of high-handedness? Any previous instance that you can think of?
Well, there is no denying that in the past, and Sunny will probably corroborate that, whenever the Indian team traveled to Australia and to England, you found that they were always treated with a degree of condescension, and attributions were made, at the drop of a hat. And when they were concerned, they were obviously above it all. I mean, I remember that Jon Snow incident, for example, and when the British were concerned, they completely overlooked it. But coming down to this current predicament, if you can call it that, I think the reaction is totally unjustified. I think Nikhil already mentioned several sports events that have had thousands of people. And even now, when I was checking for the tickets for the Old Trafford test, it's almost sold out. And you look at, for example, even the US Open tennis going on, you find that the players don't have to be at all vaccinated, but the spectators have to be. So really there needs to be a more comprehensive and a lot more mature policy regarding these things. You can't tax the Indian cricket team because somebody unfortunately has been afflicted with the virus.
Mr. Rajaraman, I want to come to you now. You know, this whole concept of a bio bubble came from a very good place, that you isolate the players. Now with vaccinations done in most cases, and even if they have not been done, do you think that there has to be a constant rethink on how you stop people from getting infected? But there is a rider over here, and the rider is that no matter how hard you try, for instance, I know of many people who did not even step out of the house and got COVID. So no matter how hard your bubble may be, this is a virus.
You're right, Sanket. I'll just get to that in one moment. I'll take you back to 1984 when Mrs. Gandhi was assassinated. The England cricket team was in India, and they flew off to they flew out of India and then came back after a while. Nobody said forfeit the test match or forfeit matches that were to be played. Right, and then similarly, Kevin Peterson's team was in India when I think there was trouble in Bombay, and they flew off to Sri Lanka and came back. It was wonderful on their part to have agreed for a postponement. And when a calamity happens, and it was a calamity, both times were a calamity. When a calamity happens, teams come to a mutual understanding. Both the boards come to a mutual understanding. No board sits on the ivory tower and says that, look, you forfeit the game to me, and then I'm very happy to take the match 2-all. I think this is good sportsmanship, which perhaps England is missing out on, if it is true that it has asked for India to forfeit the game. Having said that, I think Corona is something that, like you pointed out, Sanket, can happen to anybody. You could stay locked up indoors and still pick it up. We have seen instances like that. You could be vaccinated twice over and still get the infection. I think it is normal now for people to get infected, and for one or two players or one or two support staff in the Indian team to be infected, and for England to be asking for forfeiture of a test match. I think it is inviting ridicule at its own expense.
Absolutely, and it is inviting ridicule.
Sanket, one point.
Yeah, Sanjay Jha. Do you think, I mean, hats off to Mr. Rajaraman to be able to pull out these files from history, because, you know, history in most cases has the answer for the future. And this is one such case. I mean, look at how nobody forfeited that match, as Mr. Rajaraman was talking about. And such a tragedy happened. They came back and played. Sanjay Jha.
Yeah. The Sanket, history, I'm going to pull out two aspects of history as well.
Oh, sure.
Prince Charles and Prime Minister Boris Johnson also came down with the coronavirus. So it's rather rich of the English to be giving us some kind of diktat as to how we should behave, when everyone and his auntie and his uncle know that the virus is not got any magnanimous strain to it, and even the most circumspect individual can become a victim.
That's right. Nikhil, I know I may be speculating here, but do you think that this could have to do with a certain degree of one-upmanship, a feeling of superiority of an otherwise professional board, the English Cricket Board?
Sanket, had you said this 20 years ago, I kind of may have agreed with you, not now, because now the cricketing world believes that if there is a cricketing nation that has a sense of superiority, that's India. They run international cricket. So I wouldn't get there in terms of, the money they make and everything. But just a couple of things I'd like to point out, because you were talking about recent examples. Just, 5 days ago, you had this bizarre situation in a football World Cup qualifier, one of the biggest game, on the planet, Brazil versus Argentina. And that game was stopped in the middle because health officials actually walked into the stadium in Brazil and stopped the likes of Lionel Messi and Neymar and said, listen, you guys have, lied at immigration, the Argentinian players, they haven't quarantined for a week, and so you need to stop this match. Now, something like that has happened. Now, that's reality in the world that we live in. That's reality of the, post-corona or the corona world that we live in. So these are things that are going to happen. At that time, nobody said that, listen, because Argentina didn't, follow certain protocols, balls, they should forfeit the match. No. What the FIFA has said is we'll conduct an investigation, and for now the game is suspended. So you'd say that's the right thing to do, whether it is, Argentina, Brazil, whether it's England and India. And one quick point I'd like to make, if ECB has indeed said this, if there is one board that has to show some sort of compassion, some sort of understanding towards coronavirus, it has to be the ECB, because arguably their greatest player at the moment, arguably some say the greatest player that they've got, Ben Stokes, has actually quit the game of cricket because of mental health issues. A primary reason why these mental health issues are happening, because for the last 12 odd months, players have been in these hard bubbles. A lot of these players can't take it. So Ben Stokes has actually said, I can't be playing cricket at the moment. I need a break. I need to sort myself out. He's let go of this India-England series. He may not be available for the World T20. So if there's one board that has to be compassionate towards, players being allowed to live in a soft bubble or this post-corona world that we call it, or where you're allowed to, mix in a certain way with the crowd, it should be the ECB.
No,
And
we had an Olympic, we have had Paralympics, all of that has happened and done pretty professionally.
Yeah, the only difference, Sanket, there is because it's a 2-week-long event, so you can maintain a hard bubble. But just look at cricket. The Indian team has been in this sort of hard bubble for almost 12 months now, barring that one break that they got because the IPL got, suspended and there was a case. So imagine these same players being inside bubbles, and then we become so touchy about one wrong selection that Ashwin doesn't play. Imagine if 2 or 3 Indian players were to pull out because they say, hey, listen, we can't be in these bubbles because it's getting too much. I've been in a bubble for 12 months. So these are certain things that we need to consider when we're looking at, a life living in a bubble. You've got to make it a bit soft. If you and I have resumed going to offices, why treat the players any different?
Very interesting assessment. Last word, Mr. Yajuvendra Singh, and I would like to ask this question again. What must happen of this game? What do you think the BCCI, if someone from the BCCI were to have called you and would have said, Mr. Singh, can you please advise us in a situation like this? What would your advice be?
My advice would be to talk to ECB. I think they would definitely succumb to it and accept playing the match, because for them also it's a financial loss. And I don't know whether it's whatever is true or not, but I don't think anyone wants a test match to be, forfeited or lost in this manner for any reason at all. So I think BCCI has the strength to be able to tell ECB that, and really twist a bit of an arm twister is required.
Arm twisting is required, huh?
To get it done.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And BCCI
Sanjay Jha
has
is
the
in
power
England.
to be able.
He can do the arm twisting. Mr. Jha.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
always,
I've been in the opposition for too long and I've forgotten these old sledgehammer tactics.
and he's gone there without all of us, just think, and quietly sneaked out to watch the match.
But I'm doing all that. I'm doing that testing for all of you.
That's what I love about people. They are so passionate about cricket. And there are those, like they said, there's a whole crowd that is passionate about cricket. I think they want the game there. That's why it's a house full there. And it would be depriving those people.
But Sari, I need to make an honest confession. Even Cristiano Ronaldo is going to be in town during this time.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay, let's just hope that better sense prevails and a ridiculous demand like this is not made and certainly not agreed to. Thank you very much. That's a wrap in this edition of Left, Right and Centre.